In the book of Proverbs 22 verses 7, Solomon said that a borrower is a slave to the lender. Currently, as we speak, Kenya owes its creditors, both domestic and foreign, approximately 10.9 to 11.35 trillion Kenyan shillings. That is about $84.2 to $87.7 billion. When this amount is separated, about 5.7 trillion is owed to domestic creditors, while 5.2 trillion is owed to foreign creditors. Now, who are these creditors? Let us start with domestic. See, the government of Kenya raises money through the taxes that it collects from its citizens. This money is what helps in the day-to-day running of the government. Sometimes the revenue that the government collects isn't enough to meet its obligations, and this is where it turns to borrowing. The first kind of borrowing is domestic borrowing. What the government does is that it basically borrows money from its citizens by issuing treasury bonds and treasury bills through the CBK. This enables local banks, financial institutions, and individual investors to loan money to the government for a specific period in return for semi-annual interest payments. When it comes to foreign borrowing, the Kenyan government borrows money from other governments, for example China. It also takes loans from international financial institutions like the World Bank and the IMF, and also issues bonds to the international capital markets. For the past 12 years, our country has been on a borrowing spree. Our debt has grown from 2.4 trillion in 2013 to a staggering amount of 11 trillion in 2025. Much of our borrowing has been primarily for four main things. Number one is closing on budget deficit. The second is infrastructure development. The third one is paying off loans and interests. And the last one is stealing. Personally, I am not an economist, but these four things can easily tell you why we are heavily indebted as a country. When you look at the trend of our revenue collection starting from the 2013-2014 financial year, the growth has been very slow. Compare it with our budget. As you can see, there is a difference. Our spending has always been bigger than the money we make. What has helped us actualize our budgets over the years, it is the massive debts that we have been piling up. Some of these debts have also been used to finance infrastructure projects. For example, the SGR, Kenya's most expensive infrastructure project since independence, that costed us over 466 billion shillings. Financed by the Exim Bank of China, estimates show that it will take Kenya almost 40 years to finish with the repayments that started in 2023. China is the biggest bilateral creditor to Kenya. Chinese loans account for approximately 17% of Kenya's total external public debt. The other big creditors include the World Bank, the IMF, the African Development Bank, international bondholders, and others. In simple economics 101, we all know that when you take a loan, you must pay it back. Currently, the Kenyan government spends over 40% of its revenue for debt service. This debt stress leaves very little amount of money for national growth, forcing the government to go back to the market and take up more loans. And when the debt obligation becomes high, the government takes up even more loans just to pay off other loans. This is what we did last year, when we managed to pay up the 2014 Eurobond that matured in June 2024 by using proceeds of a high interest loan that we took from the World Bank. This debt burden has made Ruto to increase taxes so as the revenue can increase. The notion that increasing taxes will spike up revenue collection isn't always true. It reaches to a point where the taxes are too high that eventually distorts economic decisions that instead reduce revenue collection. For a country to reach at a point where the economy is stressed by debt servicing, things don't turn out very well. Some recent examples are like Ghana and Sri Lanka. They were heavily in debt, but they kept on borrowing until they eventually defaulted. What followed was the devaluation of their currencies. Imports became expensive. That meant that basic commodities like food and fuel became scarce. Local bondholders got few or no interest payments. It became worse in Sri Lanka, where the government of the day was eventually ousted by the people. Recently, the president was in China for bilateral talks. What he will not say is that the main purpose for the trip was for debt restructuring. They say that the first sign of default is debt restructuring. In the beginning of this video, I said that a borrower is a slave to the lender. I close my case.